Welcome to another episode of the Doctors and Dollars podcast, where we discuss health insights and wealth secrets. I'm your host, Nate Crannell, joined today by Dr. Sera Lavelle. Sera is a clinical psychologist and owner of New York Health Hypnosis and Integrative Therapy. She uses her expertise to help those struggling with emotional eating, eating disorders, anxiety, ADHD, infertility, and relationship issues. When she's not seeing patients, she's the CEO and co-founder of Bea Better Eating, an AI technology designed to heal people's relationships with food. Through hypnotherapy and continuous ongoing learning, Bea Better Eating systematically rewires the patient's thinking to permanently change the way they think about food. Welcome to the show, Dr. Lavelle.
Thank you for having me.
What is going well today?
I actually think it's a time period that everything is going smoothly. I think saying going well in general is like sometimes you're like hurdle, but then everything comes together and everything it's like feeling like you're in a maze, but then like a wall, like a door opens. So I think between the app and the business and my kids are in a good school that we're happy about. I have no complaints right now.
Right, one of those times in life where you feel like you got to kind of bask in it, like, oh, this
Yeah.
might not last forever. Let's enjoy it while we can.
Yeah, stop the temptation to go, what's going to go wrong? Wait a minute, what's the catch? And just kind of enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you have 6-year-old twins.
Yes.
Tell us how that's going, because my sister has twin boys that are, gosh, I don't want to mess this up. They're about 9 or 10 months old now, so they're still in that baby stage.
Okay,
Super
tell her.
cute, always smiling.
Good luck. Tell her it'll get harder before it gets easier. But that
What?
having twins is amazing. I think when you have twins, the age of 4 is that magical age where, the things like, okay, so say you have a 2.5, 3-year-old, and there's two of them and one of you, right? Your husband's not around or your partner's not around. One's about to break their leg, the other's about to get hit by a car, and you're like, sorry about your leg, twin number one, but I gotta go get twin number two, right? By the age of 4, you could say things like stop, and they'll stop and look at you, and they're less likely to become seriously injured. But having twins is super fun. I mean, they're best friends, they're boy-girl twins, they're super cute. I like the age of 6. If I could freeze them at this age, I'd probably do it.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to watch this show anytime soon, but which do you like better, a boy or a girl? Like, which is easier, I should say. Not that you like better.
I've asked myself if I'm kidding myself when I say it, but it's not that you do love them equally, but in different ways, right?
Sure.
I mean, my little girl she's the party animal. She's always up for going out. She's super fun. She's like, yeah, let's do it. Like, and just ready for an adventure, try anything. And my little boy, he's like, he's more of like loves to relax, but he's so cuddly and he's like such a cute little guy and he's such a charmer. And so I couldn't say one that I'm like feel more attached to one or I prefer one. But if I wanted to stay home and watch a movie, I'd probably go with my little boy. If it was like trying a new adventure, I'd probably go with my little girl.
There you go. I can totally relate to that. I have 3. They're 9,
Oh,
6, and
that's
4.
great.
My 9-year-old is like she's a mini mom, right? Very responsible. That first child. And then I have a
Uh-huh.
6-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. And my daughter and son
Wow.
they're not 2 years apart. They're like 20 months apart.
Mhm.
But same thing. My 6-year-old daughter is the wild child. She's up for anything. She'll do anything. Whereas my son, he's still kind of in that mama's boy stage. He'll, cuddle up. He's calm, very sweet,
Oh.
but also
Oh.
has kind of that, that side to him where
Oh.
you're just waiting for like the scream of, hey, I broke my arm type of thing. I'm waiting
Mm.
for that. So super fun ages. I can't imagine it being with twins, when at that age I can, but like, hanging out with my nephews, man, just 2 babies at one time. You're essentially playing zone defense all the time, where it's just like, oh gosh, which one takes priority here? So
And they play off of that too.
oh, for
They'll fight
sure.
for your attention.
Absolute.
Uh,
So kids are 6. Obviously you started your career well before that. You
mhm.
started your practice, like we talked about, New York Health Hypnosis and Integrative Therapy back in 2007. uh
Correct.
in psychology, obviously, I think I told you offline, I have a business degree with a psychology minor. I love psychology. That's part of why I brought you on the show. But in all the fields of psychology, all the things you could have done, what attracted you to hypnosis as your primary form of treatment?
So, I mean, it is a bit of an interesting story, right? And
Yeah, let's
there's
hear
always this so what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a hypnotist. So,
it.
I don't always frame it that way, but I was doing my master's at NYU. I was applying for PhD programs, and I was doing real estate at the time, trying to make ends meet. And I didn't even think I was going to get into a PhD program. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I got in. And my next thought was, wow, I live in New York City with two roommates, and how am I going to pay for this? At that time, I was also very into volunteering. So that summer, before I started for my PhD, I did this volunteer trip in Cambodia where we were building water wells,
Wow.
and I kind of traveled all around Southeast Asia. And it was such a cool experience. And I got a lot more into meditation. And, 27 years old, that kind of experience really changes you. So there I am. I'm like, okay, how am I going to support myself through my PhD program? I also felt like, okay, I want the traditional schooling, but there's always been a part of me that's more drawn to something a little bit more alternative. um I was like, okay, well, learning these different techniques, like how could I think outside of the box? How could I use this idea of like getting into a meditative state? And hypnosis kept coming up, and hypnosis kept coming up. And back then people didn't really know so much about it, but I was drawn to it. So I was like, okay, well, why don't I try this? So first I got hypnotized myself. I was like, wow, this really is like meditation. It's
Sure.
meditation, but just it's almost like meditation plus psychology, right? You're using language in a certain way. You're getting into that altered state, which I had just always gravitated towards. So I started doing hypnosis for things like smoking cessation, just basic weight loss, stage fright, things that weren't clinically diagnosable. And I
Oh,
opened an office on a floor in Soho with a lot of other psychologists. So I'd be very clear, look, I'm not a therapist, but I could do hypnosis with you, and then I would coordinate with their psychologists. And then a lot of people on the floor ended up referring to me a lot because they would continue as the primary therapist. Whereas I might see them if they're having, something like fear flying or something that's kind of um, that hypnosis could aid the therapy without me being their primary therapist.
mm,
Um, so I continued to do it, and I really fell in love with it because you see more rapid change. Now, with hypnosis, it's always a delicate balance because I don't want to promise people a quick fix because they already get that conception off of TV that like,
mhm.
bam, you can come in once and all these problems will be fixed instantaneously. But, through my PhD program, I started studying a lot of the research. All the papers I wrote were on it. A lot of the research I did was on it because I was already fascinated with it. And then the research really does pan out. So, for instance, a very quick example I often give is most therapists learn CBT for insomnia, which would be called CBTI. Now, just doing hypnosis alone for insomnia, you'll get a little bit of results and then it'll come back, and a little bit of results and it come back. However, the combination of CBTI plus hypnosis, you'll find that it will shorten the treatment length by about half and produce twice the results. So in this, I started realizing that it's a really good way of working with people. I never thought I was going to specialize so much in eating disorders. It was more that eating disorders found me. Um, I found more and more that people had been in traditional therapy for a long time. And they're like, okay, well, I've now been binging and purging for 40 years, starting when they're 15. Like now they're in like their mid 50s. And they just want to try something different, right?
Mhm.
So once I was done with my PhD, I would already been used to using hypnosis alone. And then was time to really expand my practice, being like, okay, well, now I could be your primary therapist, integrating hypnosis and therapy. But I just found that it made such an improvement. And the thing about hypnosis is, no, you're not going to have a quick fix and one session's going to fix it all. However, seeing some change a little bit more immediately, I think keeps people a little bit more hopeful
Yeah.
as, and then it's almost like you're making change in enough time for the therapy to kind of kick in
Mhm.
and to make that change stable, as opposed sometimes in therapy it's more painful before it gets better, right? You have to talk about these painful things, and sometimes you're so upset when you leave the session you don't even want to go back. when you're combining hypnosis and therapy, the first half of the session, yeah, maybe kind of painful what you're talking about. But the second half was almost like getting a mental massage and you leave feeling good.
Interesting. Like a dual threat quarterback kind of. You're kind of leading them in. You're like, hey, if you're familiar with football, like dual threat
I'm not, but
quarterbacks,
I'll
like
nod my head and pretend I
so somewhat a quarterback who doesn't just
am.
stand back and throw the ball all the time.
Yeah.
They can run as well. They're very athletic. And
Yeah.
so it's like
Okay.
you might get a dual threat quarterback that will run the ball, and the defense starts to get used to like, man, this guy's just running a lot. And then all of a sudden he passes and they get a touchdown. And so
Exactly.
you're very dual threat in the sense of like, hey, we're gonna do traditional therapy session, not hypnotize, to where you're talking about some of those harder things. And then we're gonna end the session with the hypnotherapy that really a brain massage is a great way that you put that. So
Brain massage.
you're hitting them with the, hey, we're gonna talk about the tough stuff, and then hypnosis then kind of lets them let their shoulders down and relax a little bit.
Exactly.
That's
It's
awesome.
also, then you're working on two levels, right? I mean, think about something like binge eating or drugs or smoking. It's
Mhm.
not like the people don't know it's bad for them. They consciously want to quit, but I always say it's almost like their unconscious hasn't gotten the memo, right?
Mhm.
And
Is it a chemical thing?
well, there's a lot of theories that it is, right? I mean, there's like the
Mhm.
body keeps score, there's trauma. Sometimes it's just habit, but I think a lot of times it's more, I don't know, there's chemicals like endorphins raised for, there are those things, but I conceptualize in terms of their unconscious still believes they need whatever it is to be happy,
Mm.
right? That that somehow having this binge or doing this drug or drinking right now, whatever it is, like whatever habit it is that they're kind of going to compulsively and obsessively, it's that they have this need to feel better and their brain convinces them that it's going to make them feel better quite then. And hypnosis can kind of help them relax and say, hey, maybe you don't need this.
Yeah.
Or maybe your desire to not do this is really important. And if we hang on to this long enough, that craving will pass.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you feel like there's you made a good point, like the subconscious or the unconscious mind says, hey, you still need this. And so that's wiring working in the background, telling their conscious brain, like, you still need this and we need to do it. Is the hypnosis kind of a way to train the subconscious or the unconscious mind, like, you don't need this, or there's something better for you that you can do instead of binge eating, instead of smoking, and then the subconscious says, yeah, it kind of learns like, yeah, there is this other form of I guess
Yeah, but
dealing with it.
you're gonna do it less directly. So
Mm,
we use something called Ericksonian hypnosis, and it's a very specific form of hypnosis, right?
okay.
And the idea is our brains don't want to hear something, right? We're resistant, right?
Mm,
If I were to tell you right now, okay, right now, relax, don't pay attention to what I'm saying, and let your mind drift.
okay.
You almost want to stay more present and not listen to that, right?
Hmm.
I could, however, something like say in almost a disguised way, right? Like you don't want to train your mind to stay on track. It's not worth the trip. Now, your people will hear train, track, and trip, even though what I'm saying is to relax your mind, it's not worth it. And in some ways, you're using this art of language to kind of, it's conceptualized as speaking to the unconscious mind directly. I mean, that's one specific technique, but there's a lot of different techniques, but it's always the art of using language to speak directly to the unconscious mind.
That's so interesting. So how do you I know that eating disorders, you said, kind of found you. It's a very prominent part of your guys' practice.
Mm-hmm.
What's probably the most common used technique if someone comes in that has let's say emotional eating
Okay.
is something that they just can't strike? What's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the most common, I guess, way that people can overcome that you see?
I mean, it does take a lot of therapy. I
Hmm.
think working with eating disorders is one of the hardest things to work with, and it's why a lot of people don't touch it. And then
Hmm.
it's also thought of as this kind of almost like teenage disease, right? But the reality is, it's not that it's more prevalent necessarily in teenage years, but that people get better at hiding it. And somebody's
Oh,
watching the teenager, so a parent is making them go in. Whereas if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, you're successful, You'd be surprised how many spouses don't even know that their partners have an eating disorder. They get really good at hiding it, right? So it's something really, really ingrained. Change is not going to happen overnight. However, what you are doing through hypnosis is you are using a lot of techniques, a lot of like metaphors, analogies, visualizations to just really help that person's. It's kind of two different things, right? We're always ambivalent. We want to quit our eating disorder, but we also don't want to. Or we want to most of the day until we get a craving, and then we want to, right? However, you're making somebody so aware of how much they want to change that it's easier for them to stop themselves.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a great way to put that. Yeah, I've
Right?
never heard it that way. Like
Yeah.
you're bringing forward like, hey, your desire to change. So it's not like, hey, you
Mhm.
have this disorder and we need to get rid of it. It's you have this disorder and you want to change it. And so like we got to
Yeah,
empowerment almost to you want to change it. Let's go down that road.
that's a big basis of hypnosis. I think of hypnosis and it's a very therapy term, but motivational interviewing, very much the same, right? Like
Yeah.
people will be like, you got to make me stop this. And I'm like, but you're the one sitting in my office. You're the one who came in here, right? Let's get in that touch with that part of you. Um, like a fun analogy we'll do sometimes, as another example. It made me think because it's Halloween, right?
Hmm.
It's you'd say something like everybody wants a sweet sometimes, everybody wants a reward, but a sweet that makes you feel sick or that makes you feel badly about yourself, well, that's not really a treat. In fact, that's more of a trick than a treat, right? And you can play with these
Mm.
things and getting them to remind themselves, like, this isn't really going to make me happy. This is a trick, right?
Gosh, I love analogies, and that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. It's hypnosis is fun. I think anybody who does it like falls in love with it because it's fun, it's creative. You get in this altered state. You get into something called a mutual trance, which means that you also feel like you're in this state somewhat when they are, and it's
Mm.
like it's a nice feeling.
I never thought. I mean, yeah, you almost got you're not hypnotizing yourself, but like your own voice or your own flow state that you're in to try and hypnotize that person then is kind of on yourself. That's interesting. Hmm.
Mhm.
So I got one more thing on this topic, and then I want to shift gears on you a little bit. But
Yeah.
tell me about the biggest win I think that you've had with a patient through hypnosis. Like, what was their diagnosed disorder? What
Mhm.
obstacles did you have to overcome throughout all of their therapy sessions to really see a positive change in their behavior?
So I want to make sure I'm, just for patient
Oh yeah, yeah,
confidentiality,
yeah,
I want to
yeah.
be as
Just
ambiguous as I possibly can.
absolutely go for it.
I would say in general, there's probably some narcissistic gratification in like the longer a person had an eating disorder,
Hmm.
and that you're the person who's able to help them overcome it, that feels like a big win.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it's like, and you get a high off of like, this isn't a win for me. It feels like it's a win for them. And you
Hmm.
just get so happy about that. When a person walks in your office, and it's like, I notice each time somebody's really ready. It's never me saying today's the day. They walk in after several sessions and they're like, I've decided I'm done. And it's just like, I've decided I'm done binging and purging. And it's
Hmm.
like, it gives you chills and you're like, wow, it's like and just knowing that person doesn't have to live, um, not with the binging and purging, but like there's this like period the next day or later after you do it that they just feel so horrible about themselves, and
Hmm.
knowing that they don't have to go through that anymore. That to me is a really big win, to know that they like could start to feel better about themselves, like starting
Easy,
that.
yeah, easy way to put a smile on your face is just to have
Yeah.
a patient say, because you saw them when they might not have been ready to be in therapy, and so you
Yeah.
saw them day one when they were probably at
Hmm.
their lowest, and they've realized they've hit the bottom to where they need therapy, and now you're
Hmm.
seeing them at that point where they're like, I'm not doing this anymore, and you know personally that it was your help that got them there, but it's still them
And
winning.
you don't conceptualize that way in hypnosis, right? Because it's never me,
Yeah.
it's always them, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, good way to put it there too.
I just happen to
Yeah.
be there.
Yeah. Do you see a lot of those big wins or I'm not gonna binge eat anymore? I mean,
Yeah.
my next question for you is around some other specialties that you guys have in your office. But I mean,
Mhm.
you guys specialize in a lot of things amongst you and all the doctors that are in your thing. Do you see um, eating disorders are those where some of the biggest wins come from?
I think I would say it's the biggest wins because it's the hardest to treat. I
Mm,
mean, it's even well known in the field of psychology that, a lot of therapists don't touch it because there's such a high relapse rate. It's really hard to cure. So I find that the biggest win, because I deal with that quite a bit. But I know other people in my practice. I'm thinking one of my fellow therapists. I know for her a really big win is she works with phobias. So,
mm.
a person who might not want to leave their house because they're so afraid of dogs, and they actually are out and have friends and making those changes, or can't cross a bridge, or like they have a phobia that's greatly impacting their lives, and then they're able to overcome that. I know in my conversation that that's as big of a win for them as eating disorders is for me.
Oh, I
Right?
bet. Man, phobias are huge, and there's hundreds of phobias out there, and so
And we
oh
deal with a
man,
lot of, and people come to us for a specific reason, right? Because a lot of therapists don't know how to do these kind of one-off. There's exposure therapy, which we incorporate all the other standard forms of therapy for phobia. Um, but we deal with a lot of needle phobias, a lot of fear of flying, animal phobias like dogs, spiders, um, fear of,
spiders.
yeah, spiders.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not gonna introduce a spider to me and be like, hey, you're gonna touch this spider to get rid of this phobia. I'll throw it
Yeah,
across
you're
the
like,
room.
"Ah, I'll be okay." Yeah. But that's a great thing about hypnosis, actually. In like classical behaviorism, you would do an actual spider. But with hypnosis, you could use a visualization in your mind that's not, to aid in approach behavior without it having to physically be there. And it's a lot less invasive, and you have a lot lower of a dropout rate for therapy because it's not as
Yeah,
invasive and you're in a
yeah,
relaxed state.
yeah. Very cool. It's a different way of thinking about it. That's cool. Last thing on with the New York Health and Hypnosis practice.
Mhm.
I was wandering around your guys' website a little bit.
Okay.
I noticed one of the clinic's specialties is pregnancy and hypnobirthing.
Okay.
So that's not, I got to assume that's not, a pregnant mother being under hypnosis at the time of delivery. It's probably more of a way to envision, a positive pregnancy, a smooth delivery
Yes.
leading up to the event. So tell me a little
Yeah.
bit how that became
Yeah. Well,
a part of your practice.
we work with a lot of childbirth fears, right? Pregnancy is triggering for people. And specifically, sometimes we work with the interplay between pregnancy and eating disorders, even. And that's a really difficult one because a person, say you're anorexic and you're like, it's such a contrast. Okay, I know I have to put on weight and I can't restrict, it's not good for my unborn child, but I'm so fearful of gaining weight. Some people are very afraid of actually the delivery. Sometimes it really just is a fear of pain and the
Mm,
unknown. But I think in many ways it's representative of, it's easy to say, I'm afraid this is going to be painful. It's harder to admit yourself, wow, this is going to be the most life-changing event in my entire life. And I don't know what to expect after that. Right. So for some people, it's triggering trauma, um, being pregnant and the idea of childbirth. For other people, it's they're afraid they're going to pass out or they've heard a story. Um, so sometimes we're using it to just kind of more therapeutically, what's going on for you in the moment that you're so afraid of it. And
mhm,
then other times we are teaching hypnobirthing techniques for them to do self-hypnosis in the session,
mhm.
right? Some like just giving them some guided meditations that they could use at that time, right? And kind of practicing with it, right? They can get themselves into a safe space. They could get themselves into a relaxed state. No, we're not physically going in with them, but
Yeah.
yeah, but there are like doulas who do actually are
Mhm.
trained in hypnobirthing and will be there with them. We're approaching more psychologically.
For sure. And around pregnancy and delivery, there's a ton of psychological thoughts that go into that, right? I even think as you were talking, like post event, like after they've delivered, maybe they had a traumatic delivery. And
Very
there's some
much so.
PTSD that comes with that. Like I know um my wife, for example, I just think after our second kid, she had a pretty traumatic birth, or delivery, that is. And,
Mhm.
a lot of blood loss, talks of transfusions, things like that. Very, very
Wow.
serious event. And then it wasn't much longer. Like I told you, my 6-year-old and 4-year-old aren't terribly far apart. And she was like, "Hey, let's have another kid." In my mind, I'm like, "Don't you remember how like traumatic that was?" And it
Uh,
must have went right over because she was ready to go again. But
oh
I gotta
no,
imagine there's a lot of mothers out there that if they had an event like that, they're like, "I am
yeah.
never getting pregnant. Don't
Mhm.
even think about it," because that just seems so terrifying to me that I would do that again.
I mean, I've always joked that there's like childbirth amnesia, right? And then it's an adaptive
Yeah,
trait that we have to in order to continue to like to procreate and our species to continue to be alive, right?
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, a lot of people are traumatized by it. It could be something severe like your wife. Other people, it could just be feeling like a failure because they weren't able to have a natural childbirth. And they had like some people are very okay with the C-section. Other people, they just had something very different in mind. But there's a reality. I mean, our species does not have the easiest childbirth.
Sure, sure. It's not like we're out on the Serengeti and we're just kind of walking. All of a sudden, the baby just kind of drops
Just kind
out.
of
Yeah.
Yeah, or if you do a comparative study, I actually did write my dissertation on kind of reproduction and like evolutionary, but you look at
Mm,
dogs, they could pop out like 9 puppies and they're walking around, the puppies are walking around. It's very different for human beings.
yeah. Hey everyone, I wanted to take a moment to talk about what I do outside of being the host of the Doctors and Dollars podcast. I'm the CFO of Grand Vision Capital Group. At Grand Vision, we work with high income earners who make a great living, but still can't quite break through that true wealth ceiling. We utilize strategically chosen investments tailored for high income earners. The question always at the forefront of our minds is why wait for retirement to finally live when you can implement an investment strategy that will impact your life today? To be honest, most of the people we work with never even knew these options existed because their financial planner doesn't have access to these exclusive investments. So, if you're ready to finally turn your high income into real wealth, visit our website, www.grandvision.co, and hit the Take Action button in the top right corner to schedule some time with me. Or even better, follow me on any of my social media accounts, shoot me a message. Now, back to the show. Well, definitely not a good segue, but we're going to shift focus a little
Yes,
bit because,
exactly, because I could talk
well,
about that forever.
yeah, for sure. Your focus, though, and something that I think going forward you're going to be able to talk about forever, you've started to integrate AI into the world of psychology with the creation of Bea Better Eating.
Mhm.
Tell me how you see. First, tell me about the app, which I know we could probably talk the rest of this discussion about your what's coming for you. But tell me how you see AI being a driving force in psychological care moving forward.
Yeah. So it's interesting how you phrased it, right? Because it's something I really think about quite a bit, right?
Hmm.
I don't see at this point, and probably never actually, as AI being a replacement for therapy.
Hmm.
I do think it be as being a very useful tool that can actually even aid in therapy sessions. So I don't want to give too much information, but I was my idea for this app was triggered by somebody who was a male and he was going through a breakup and he was too embarrassed to talk to friends about it, how sad he was. He
Hmm.
was too afraid to talk to, family. It's like not very masculine to like be upset over a breakup. And he found this app that you could talk to called Mend and you could just talk to it all day. Back then it was like a chatbot, right?
Yep.
And he said something really interesting to me that day. He said, "Well, what I like about it is that it's around all the time, but I actually really like that it's not a human because I don't worry about it judging me or that I'm just going to see me like I'm whining." And I had this aha moment. I'm like, wow, my eating disorder patients, that's exactly what they need. One thing you'll find with eating disorders is it's really hard as a therapist because the more therapeutic bond you have, the less likely your patients are to be honest with you because they don't want to
Yeah.
disappoint you, right?
Yeah.
Right. At the same time, I came up with this idea. I had just gone virtual. And I had also noticed that my eating disorder patients, as soon as I went virtual, started opening up and being more honest with me. And it's almost the idea that I'm like becoming less real, right?
Hmm.
So I don't see AI, at least in the context of my app, replacing therapy. However, I see it as a tool that can be there at any time, right? Like interactive self-help. But what I'm finding instead is you're actually practicing talking to it all week. And then it's easier to talk to your therapist in real life.
It's
Right?
like a supplement. It's not a replacement. It's more of a
Not a,
supplement.
exactly, not a replacement, it's a supplement, right? But
Yeah.
there's something about, you should be vulnerable at certain times. You can't do that all week, but there's something about the presence of a human being that, in that 45-minute session, you could say, hey, this app made me realize this, or wow, I noticed this pattern in this way. And then they've been talking about it, but then they're really talking to a real person that kind of knows their history.
Yeah, so I know
Um,
it's in beta stage right now, correct? So
yep.
have you seen thus far in people that are leveraging the app, have you noticed that they're talking to it throughout the week, and that just creates do they come to the session that when they are talking with you or talking with their therapist, that it's like they've kind of already had like these aha moments, and then it's just
Yes.
more of a unloading of like, man, on Wednesday I said this to Bea Better Eating, and it really was like a light bulb moment for me. And then you can kind of come into the conversation as a true human being, more as a
Mhm.
someone sitting across from them, right?
Yeah,
To be able to really hammer home like, this is, you're creating, uh you're accelerating almost
you
their
could
growth and
accelerate
development
it.
with this, because they did kind of the hard, again, a football analogy.
Yep.
I
We'll
told you I
go
love
with it.
analogies. It's like they're practicing all week, and then you're like
Practicing.
the big game on Saturday, right?
Exactly. That's a great
Okay,
analogy. I don't know
yeah,
sports that well, but that I get.
yeah, yeah. Practice, 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 and then you're
But
the
yeah, it's a
show,
big
right?
game though. But you need the adrenaline of the big game. You need it to be more real. You need it to be, But that being said, it's like it's around all the time. I can't be there for my patients when they're about to binge. I can't be there in
Mhm.
the moment, right?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So you created Be a Better Eating
Mhm.
around around the eating disorders.
Mhm.
Do you see? I mean, I'm looking at your other specialties here that you have. As far as OCDs, the phobias we talked about, grief,
Mhm.
depression, loss of a family member. Do you see yourself, or anybody, I guess, maybe there's other apps out there, do you see yourself integrating AI into some of those other specialties that you guys have?
I could definitely see, right? I mean, ours is for kind of like more emotional eating, binge eating, as opposed to like, specifically like bulimia
Hmm.
but I think it could be helpful for a lot of things, right? I mean, it's all about making sure people do it appropriately. So for instance, like within our app, we have a find the therapist. So anytime somebody says, yes, I'm bulimic or something like, hey, it's more extreme than self-help, we do remind them, hey, we're here for self-help for you, but just so you know, would you like us to geolocate a therapist in your area? And it will actually pull up therapists like where they're located as well. I think
Wow.
we run into a danger where if we pretend that it's a replacement for therapy and that nobody's really monitoring, right, in real life.
Mm.
I could see all of these things. I think it'd be very helpful, for instance, with OCD. There's like wanting to engage in a compulsion. I think it could be very helpful for those things. I think anxiety in general. Um, would it be helpful if I explained how our app worked a little bit?
Yeah, that was actually my next question. Is, yeah, tell
Yeah,
me. Yeah, I mean, it went
yeah,
from an idea to a beta stage. Tell me about what beta
yeah,
stage is looking like. How does it function, so the
yeah,
listeners kind of know, if they're going to listen to this and they're going to go out and look it up, right? And
yeah,
so tell us a little bit how it works.
yeah. Like we're doing a prolonged beta because, this is a huge responsibility of the world.
Hmm.
It's like I'm talking to, anybody who's using the app. So our concept is it's so our concept is it's you can talk to it at any time, but there's also very specific guided activities. So first I'll talk about kind of the open chat. So
Yeah.
the open chat feature is an AI. However, we've programmed it with a vector database that we've loaded every blog I've ever written, every podcast I've ever done, everything I've ever said into this database. So then it kind of um it's been trained to speak and think like me in the
Mm.
responses. So for instance, if you ask ChatGPT, what's the best diet? They will give you diet advice, right? If you ask Be a Better Eating, what's the best diet? It would say, actually let's talk away from dieting. Instead, we're going to focus on how you feel and what your patterns are. Right? And then it'll engage you in different activities. But you can ask it any question at any time, and it will respond in a way that I personally believe doesn't trigger eating disorders, will help people heal, will get people away from calorie counting, will get people away from like all these things that I really feel like are making people worse, right? And is perpetuating this kind of binge purge cycle, right? So that's kind of the open part of it. Then within it, there's three distinct activities. One's knowledge, there's motivation, and there's meditation. So knowledge is, hey, this is kind of like our lesson for today. And it's guiding you through AI to help you understand your own patterns and learn about your own hunger signals and what kind of things feel good to your body. And like really, it's kind of like ongoing knowledge, and it learns more and more about you. Motivation is, hey, I really feel like I want to overindulge right now. What should I do? And it walks you
In
through
the
these
moment, kind of that in the
yes,
moment
in
thing.
the moment. Yeah. Okay, let's analyze how you'll feel if you eat it. Let's analyze how you'll feel when you don't. What kind of activity could we do instead right now? Would it be helpful to go for a walk? Would it be helpful for this? Do you want to do a 1 minute mindfulness exercise? And so it's like really the part that you go to when you're like, hey, I feel overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do in this moment? The third is like a headspace, but they're specific hypnotherapy recordings that we've made, headspace quality, but are specifically for body image, emotional eating, binge eating, things like that people can listen to every day. So that's the app in a nutshell.
Nice. So it's almost like this is for your knowledge that you can use at any time. There's the, hey, right now, you're in this moment, and how can we get ourselves out of it? Some alternatives. And then meditation is like, how can we move ourselves away from those thoughts in the future?
Exactly.
Man, like, you guys really sat down and thought through this. Like, and obviously you've had years of experience talking with people with eating disorders.
I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited. I mean, we want to have an extended beta because we want to get enough feedback before we launch the app store. But, just getting the results on the beta, I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. And how incredible you guys were able to, I'm guessing that the AI that you're using is similar, or it is Chat GPT, right? So there's
It's
the
built off.
conversational.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's built off of it, but then it pulls from our own data for
For
the
sure.
answer
Yeah.
instead of pulling from
Yeah. That's the part that's so incredible to me, is it's pulling from your data, all the different things that you've done out there. I'm assuming in the future, if you connect this with, the New York Health Hypnosis, your practice, there's other doctors, within your firm that could also be a part of this. But how incredible is it that it's yours? And so it's even more personal, even though it is an AI app, right? It's even more personal than simply going out to Chat GPT, and that a computer is
Yeah,
talking back to you.
exactly. You could ask ChatGPT diet advice, but it's not going to know, what triggers eating disorders. It's not going to know. It's not going to sit there and say, "Hey, well, let's evaluate what feels good to your body." It's just going to be very generic dieting advice, right? You should eat this many carbs. You should eat this much fat. You should eat that, right?
Yeah, trust me, I've gone out to Chat GPT and created, workouts like, hey, I'm trying to lose 15 pounds, and here's the weight equipment that I have at my house. Create a 30-minute workout for me. And it is very generic, and they do work, but like, you're right, it's not personal, right?
Yeah.
To theirs.
I could tell you, Bea would say, hey, let's not focus on the number right now. Let's focus on what you're most likely to do. She'd argue with you. Like, we're not going to focus on 15 pounds.
Well, it's good. You need some of that pushback. It's you tell yourself in your head, like, hey, your weight is just a number. It's how do you feel? How do you look in your clothes? And Bea would just be a little bit more honest about it. Then Chat GPT would be like, you will lose 15 pounds, pick up some weights.
Yep, exactly.
Eat less food, calorie deficit, and lift some weights.
Yeah, there you go.
That's awesome. What do you see is next? I know you guys have a prolonged beta stage. It sounds like you're making tremendous leaps as this thing went from an idea to where you are today. What do you think those final touches are that you really want to make sure that your customers or your patients that are using this can enjoy and participate in?
So, I mean, we want to make sure it's tried and tested,
Mhm.
and make it, get the positive feedback. Other than that, it's pretty ready to go. I would like to add a few more hypnosis recordings to the library. I'd like there to be a little bit more of an interactive dashboard, but I also try to keep in mind, in a book I read once, it's like if you're not embarrassed of the first version of your product, it means you waited too long to last. So if I waited for
Mm.
everything that I wanted the app to do, it'd wait too long, but there's a lot of things. And then also, once we launch it to a larger amount of people, we'll get all that data and we could find, hey, people really love the meditation a lot and want to focus more on that. Or we could find that, hey, the motivation part is like really the part people use the most. And
Mhm.
then, so there's the ideas that I have now, but I also know that there'll be more ideas of how I want to continue to shape her once she launches.
For sure. Before I switch gears on you, I got to ask about the hypnosis part
Mhm.
of Bea Better Eating. I know you
Yeah.
shared it with me when we were offline, how because people would think like they've seen hypnotists at like a show or something like that, right?
Mhm.
And it's like there's a lot of um specific phrasing, and kind of like you talked about earlier, there's like the touch on the shoulder, there's snapping fingers, there's all those things that traditionally people understand about hypnosis.
Mhm.
How have you integrated that into the Be a Better Eating, AI? How have you
Yeah. I
incorporated
think
hypnosis there?
because it's mindful hypnotherapy and it's
Mhm.
Ericksonian, I don't think the average person would really know the difference. And I don't know how much difference there is actually between guided meditation and Erickson hypnosis, other
Okay,
than it just be a stronger use of analogies and a stronger use of metaphors, um, as opposed to something that might just be, for relaxation, right?
interesting.
Um, yeah, so it's going to be relaxing. It's going to be something, that's kind of like, oh, a woman's walking through the woods and her body feels good and she's searching through, it's going to be something pleasant that's going to make you want to feel healthy, but you might not know why. But it's going
Interesting.
to
So
be
you're gonna,
the art of storytelling, right?
yeah. So you're gonna, it's gonna be one of those. It's gonna be like, hey, sit down, find a comfortable chair, throw in
Yep.
your AirPods,
I'm
close
pretty
your
sure
eyes.
it says pretty much that. Yep. Make
Yeah,
sure you're
yeah.
not driving.
Yeah, don't have your 6-year-old twins running around playing.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
just sit down, relax, and then yeah, listen to that kind of the storytelling as you said
The
it. So
storytelling, yeah.
that's very
Yeah,
cool.
and we went through a lot of different voices. I'm very happy with Via's voice. It's just soothing, relaxing music in the background. Mhm.
Awesome. So as you've gotten married, you've had kids, you've built a practice, you've traveled the world, you've lived in multiple cities, and now you've started the AI app all over the past, let's say 17 years of your career. Tell me how
Mhm.
you and your husband, you and your family have found some work-life balance in a healthy way.
So I know I said this offline, but I really love hearing. I was at a like actually a tech conference, which is just such a different world for me that I'm going to tech conferences now as opposed to like guided hypnotherapy conferences. And um, but I like the idea they talked about work-life integration. I really love what I do. Um, and sometimes it might be getting up on a Saturday morning and writing something because I'm inspired before the kids get up. It's like the work-life balance. It's my husband and I do coordinate very well as a couple. It's like, hey, he's traveling for work, I'm doing a little bit more. And then, he's back home and I'm, doing this. And every day is a little bit of kind of a communication, but I really one thing I do want to make sure is that I stay present for my children. So
Mhm.
when they get home from school, that those are the times that I'm, with them, paying attention, doing those things. But otherwise, when you like what you're doing, if you're waking up Saturday morning because you're so inspired you want to write something, I don't look at that the same way as I had a boss that made me
Mhm.
do this thing, right? Or if I had this new idea for Bea and I just wanted to like map it out. I mean, that's even if it's in the middle of the day and I'm like on a Saturday, I'm like, hey, I gotta write this down. That's it's like integrated into your life, right?
Mhm. So you've done it in the right way, right? Communication is key. That's kind of the overarching theme that I hear from a lot of people when I ask them about work-life balance. It's communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's reducing stress level in a bunch of different areas of your life. One of the
Mm-hmm.
biggest stresses I think is finances. whether it be
Mhm.
through your practice, whether it be through the app, whether it be through, at your home. How have
Mhm.
you and your husband created that, like that financial stability for you guys? So just to take that stressor off the shelf, like that's not even something that you guys have to worry about.
Well, let's see. We spent 3 years building a house and in an area that we had to pay for private school. And then I woke up one day and I said, let's just rent out our house, forget the private school, and move back and do an apartment because it's like, then if one of us loses our jobs, it doesn't even matter. And then we
Yeah,
can continue to invest and do this. And I'm fairly certain most of my friends think I'm crazy. We had a beautiful house, but I'm actually very happy to be living in an apartment again that has a gym that's not, a lot of bathrooms to clean, that we feel we're more walkable again. And that is something I feel like eliminated a lot of stress. And it just made me feel, yeah, it's just more free to invest and actually keep growing, as opposed to living in a state where you're then going to a better private school and getting a bigger house to get a better card, and then you're like continuing to not acquire wealth but just pay for things. You kind of have to ask yourself, well, is that the life I want, or do I want a life where I'm continuing to grow? Mm.
yeah, beautifully said. I mean, that's really the key or the genesis of our company, Grand Vision Capital, and me and my two partners. We all three of us have that similar lifestyle. It's exactly what you explained. Like it's not the continue to do more and build more so that you can buy nicer things. It's
Uh-huh.
being happy with what you have so that you can invest. You can go out on a 2 week vacation and not worry about it. Uh,
Yeah.
Versus, man, I got to save up and work all year so that I can go on that really cool, really expensive vacation that I can put on Instagram, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Or buy this really great couch.
yeah, exactly.
I'm like, it just, if that makes you happy, I'm all for it.
Mhm.
But I'm not that excited about a really nice couch. I'm
Yeah, for
excited
sure.
about going out and traveling and doing, getting back to that person I was who just took off to Cambodia and was building water wells. And right, if you have
It's
financial freedom, you could do those things. If you have a huge mortgage and you're paying for this and that, I think your life gets smaller.
for sure. No, absolutely. So you talked about creating that more breathable lifestyle, the kind of the
Hmm.
alternative lifestyle to what your friends
Hmm.
think. And believe me, my friends think the same way about my wife and I, so I totally get it. But
Uh,
uh what does that mean? You talked about investing. I know
uh,
you guys have invested in real estate and other
mhm,
alternative investments. You've obviously put money into your practice and growing that.
mhm.
Tell me about how that freedom to invest has really created more financial freedom for you guys.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's created a lot of financial freedom for us. I mean, we bought our first investment property. Actually, that's how we ended up moving to Florida from New York City.
Hmm.
Um, was again, we wanted more financial freedom, and we bought an investment property, and it was a great decision. And that actually, a lot of people think you can't buy an investment property until you get a house because you'll use all your capital, but sometimes that's actually helping you buy a house later, right?
Hmm.
And
Yep.
then this last year, it's so we're maybe I shouldn't speak too soon, but we bought a place in Tulum, Mexico. My husband's actually from Denmark, which he's always pushing for more of the work-life balance. The Danish mentality is definitely more work-life balance, but we also love to travel and we want to teach our children to be international. We want them to be more citizens of the world than, strictly American, especially being in an American European household. So that was something we saw. Tulum was really growing. We like that everything's sustainable there, that they're putting in a lot of infrastructure. And we're like, that just kind of, it seems like fun. It seems, again, getting outside of that specific thinking where things have to be one way. We can invest there, we could see how it goes. And I don't know what's next after that.
Yeah. Do you see you see the kids learning Spanish, you guys learning Spanish, kind of integrating yourselves
Yep.
into that community? And then, I mean, that,
Mhm.
yeah, you're right. You have the Tulum, Mexico, you have the Florida, you have the Denmark, even if you want
Mhm.
to,
Mhm.
really stretching it out. I mean, to me, that is work-life integration to be able, because I got to imagine you're not going down to Tulum to live in that property and just not working while you're there, right? You're still
No,
integrating that.
no. And then even, in some ways, so, right now we're trying to furnish it to be able to Airbnb it. I mean, is that
Mhm.
work or is that life? Right?
Mhm.
It's like it's somewhere in between, but it's fun. Right.
Mhm. And you and your husband both have jobs that you can work remotely, correct? So you have the ability to continue a work-life integration,
Mhm.
but
Yes.
to be able to continue to
Yes.
travel and
Well, with
make money.
travel, that's a little harder, right? Because we both have jobs that, we do, as a psychologist, I can't really practice while I'm in Mexico.
Mhm.
So even though remotely I could licensing law, and the same for him, he couldn't just take off a year and work wherever. He'd have,
Mhm.
so we can, but we both have enough flexibility that we can take enough vacations. Mhm.
Gotcha. You're living the lifestyle now, right?
Mhm.
The big phrase that we have at Grand Vision Capital is why wait for retirement? Far too many
Yes.
people just save and save and save for a distant
Mhm.
future retirement in their 60s and 70s when their bodies are slowing down. The things that they want to do just aren't as easy as they were, in their
Yeah.
40s. Um, and so why wait for retirement is really our big mantra. And it feels like you guys are doing that now. But
We're
as
having
you
a lot of fun.
I love it. I love it. It sounds like it. But what strategies do you feel are key to a successful retirement, and what of those have you started integrating into your planning today, aside from real estate?
Well, I think it was actually one advisor that really stuck with me. I mean, we do work with a financial advisor. So we
Absolutely.
have a mixture of like safe investments, and we
Mhm.
have our 401ks and we're saving for the kids' colleges and we're doing, and then these are kind of like more of our fun money. But I think, it's the advice I would give to everybody, which is probably what made me scratch my head this year and move back into an apartment from a home is you should be spending money on the things that personally bring you joy, not what other people think should, right?
Absolutely.
So if you're somebody who really loves a big home and loves the comfort of it, like the Danish have the word hygge, right? It's like very comforting. You're in your own surroundings and like nice things do actually make you happy. You should spend your money on that, right? Like, however, if that same person can find that like a trap or like feel like they need adventure to make them happy, I think you should just be thinking, is my money going to what I personally feel like is making me happy?
Mhm. It's a different way to look at it because a lot of people will say, I want my money to work for me, or I want my money to grow from X amount to Y amount by a certain time so that I can go do this thing, in the
Yeah.
future. Everybody's thinking in the future versus
Hmm.
I love your approach of like making your money work for you, but so that you can use it for things that are positive, for things that bring you joy and happiness.
Yeah.
Uh, versus the 401ks are great. There's a lot of
Yeah.
tax
You need
deferment
to
there, and
mix, you need to diversify.
you got to diversify. You
Mhm.
got to have those things in there because you're going to want to do things that make you happy when you are
Mhm.
60, and that's where those
Yeah.
401ks and IRAs are going to come
Mhm.
into play. You're wanting to create a great education opportunity for your kids, so you're saving now where the happiness will then come when your kids go off to school and you're able to help them out with that. But for you to create alternative investments outside of those things that you can leverage today, I think is super important. And I think you're practicing what you preach. And I think that's really awesome.
Thank you.
You bet. So before I let you go, what's next for your practice? What's next for your family? What does 2024 look like for you?
2024, and I do have a patient in a minute, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
that is always gonna come first. I'll be opening a second practice that's gonna focus on trauma. We hadn't even talked about that.
Hmm.
Um, I'm expanding New York Health Hypnosis as well, and we're hoping to be able to be licensed in other states at some point. And then the big thing is launching Bea. So I don't know. I feel like 2024 has a lot. I'll hopefully have a place in Mexico, launching my app, starting a second practice. I can't think of anything else I could squeeze in there.
That's awesome. Well, I want to have you back at some point in the future.
Okay,
I want to
that
talk
sounds
about
great. I
trauma
love it.
when Bea Better Eating is out to the world and absolutely crushing it. I want to talk about that success. And obviously, whatever else comes new to you in 2024,
Yeah,
we'll definitely have you back. But it was a
thank you
pleasure
so much
having
for
you.
having me. This is a lot of fun. Thanks. All
Awesome.
right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Hey everyone, as we wrap up today's episode, I want to talk about the second opinion. As most of our listeners are physicians, you guys know the importance of having another medical professional's insight for a patient's treatment plan. But have you ever considered having a second opinion on your financial plan? Or have you simply trusted your financial advisor that they've already leveraged every strategy that your family needs to be 100% on track to meet your financial goals? That's why, for my Doctors and Dollars listeners, each Wednesday I block off 3 time slots, an hour each, to provide a free second opinion of their financial plan. During this hour, we'll reevaluate your financial goals and your risk tolerance. We'll ensure tax mitigation strategies are in place and ultimately give you confidence with your financial outlook, because that is what drives a happy home, a happy marriage, and peace of mind. These 3 spots each Wednesday do fill up fast. Send me an email at nate@grandvision.co or head over to www.grandvision.co/second opinion to fill out a quick form about you and schedule a time for us to meet. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope the rest of your week is abundant. Cheers.